Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is November 25th, 2024, and the time is 5:02. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present turn off cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet upon the front table. I would like to take a moment to review the procedures that the commission will follow tonight. First, the commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items, and for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. We will also limit your comments to 3 minutes. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the commission. The commission shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the commission. The commission will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the requested application. Any commission member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda item. That being said, roll call. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are here with the exception of Barb. And then the next item on the agenda is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Do you have any public comment not on the agenda? No one on the phone.
No.
Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move on to the next item, which is approval of the minutes from the previous minutes. And I believe we're going to do August 26, 2024 first, and then we'll do September 23rd, 2024.
I don't think.
Again,
Just for the record, they were deferred to this month.
Right, but Barb isn't here,
Oh,
so we wouldn't have.
We're in the same situation, same framework.
For
Okay,
August.
okay.
okay.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, so we still need to approve September's minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for September 23rd.
Okay, I have a motion. Could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, minutes have been approved for September 23rd. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, proposed Oak Ridge Edition minor subdivision. Dan, do you want to read that information into the record, please?
Yes, the Oak Ridge Livestock Company has filed for a 2-lot minor subdivision on the property identified as parcel number 864407400003. The subdivision is being completed to split the dwelling location from the farm ground. The minor subdivision proposal has been properly noticed in the Sioux City Journal's legal section November 14th, 2024. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via a November 8th letter about tonight's public hearing. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been notified and have been requested to comment. The Woodbury County engineer found the proposal in compliance with Iowa code closure requirements and found the lots have adequate access based upon an easement situation. As far as there being a little strip of land that directly is between the lot 1 and the road. You will see, as you would have seen in the packet, there was an easement situation prepared. The attorney did update the easement scenario, and I laid those easement language out in front of you. And I would ask if a commissioner would entertain a motion to receive this into the record So it becomes part of the review materials.
A motion to receive?
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Yeah.
All opposed, same sign. Has been received.
Okay, and to continue, this property is located in the Agricultural Preservation District. It's not located in the floodplain, nor is it within 2 miles of an incorporated jurisdiction. And extraterritorial review is not required. Based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance, because the easement has been prepared, the proposal can meet the appropriate criteria for approval of the subdivision, as the easement does support the access to the lot 1. I just want to comment that we did receive just one inquiry. Individual gave me a phone call. David Waller just inquired generally about the project and asked if this was for a hog confinement. Was basically the nature of that question. Again, I just referenced that we're just following our standardized subdivision procedure, and said I was just aware of the split of the house from the rest of the lot. So that's what I had there. But with that said, staff does recommend approval and is satisfied that there's an easement prepared. That's all I got.
Do we have anyone here tonight that represents this? Do you want to add any additional information or comments, or are you happy with what we have?
If you don't,
Yeah, if you want to talk to the microphones.
Okay. I'm J.W. Boyd with Oak Ridge Livestock Company, and I'm out of Mapleton, Iowa, and I own the property. And there's a nice old farmhouse on it, and we want to remodel that and sell 2 acres off. I want to keep the other for alfalfa field presently. And no, we're not going to do no hog confinement. So
Thank
that's all.
you.
I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions that we want to ask or any comments? Any?
I just have one comment,
Okay,
and I don't believe it's related to any of our approvals, more for the property owner, but on the easement documentation, it doesn't state what the easement is for, and typically it'll state it's for access, or it's for utility, or it's for building setback. And so I would advise, just as a property owner, that you may want to reword that easement so it's clearly noted that it's for access only, because right now it's just a blanket easement and anything can occur within that area.
All right, so I've talked with Ivner, who is the property owner, the farmer that surrounds the property. And he said it basically is a blanket easement for access, and, we'll mow it or whatever we got to do. And so it's not specific to it, just access. And the land is so narrow, it's really
Sure.
worthless to him. We thought we'd try to buy it from him, but he don't want to sell it, so.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah,
it clear that
gotcha.
that.
Do we need to clarify that in any?
No,
other
I just
term?
wanted to, I don't think it's our issue. It's more just a informational.
Sure. And it's supposed to be perpetual as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I would say, I would make the comment, I think you and I discussed it too. This
Yeah.
is a very unique and unusual situation. That was one of the things that alarmed us right away. And I know you spent some days trying to get that sorted out and figured out before we even brought it
I
to
couldn't believe it
to the
either.
application, because it was just rather shocking.
Yeah.
And there was some history of Morningside College actually having some ownership of the
Okay.
property. So we tried to trace the history on it as much as we could, but it ended up, we spent some time in the recorder's office trying to understand why that was there. And you had received comments on where it would have been ideal to be able to buy it. And so I think it really ended up evolving into this by the nature of this really not being this lot. It's nowhere near a compliant or a functional lot to do anything on. It's just a few feet basically in the scheme of things. So
Right.
I kind of think that's why it ended up like this. So,
Right.
and Jeff has a very important point there too.
Yeah.
And
It's
Tom
good to
just
have
pointed out, it's in the back where it says the aforementioned easement, and typically it's carried over into the top of the document, which says what type of easement. So maybe that does cover it. As long as the attorneys and the property owners are okay with that, so.
I'm assuming as long as the both pages are included.
It should be.
Right.
Yeah.
This was just a copy. The back of this page that we have, I'm assuming it's a signature page, so that would be notarized, that would be included in the easement, so then that's what it does pertain to is ingress and egress, so.
And basically between the surveyor and the attorneys, I'm confident they'll do
Right.
whatever's supposed to be.
I think, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but we have about 6 easements and they're all written real similar to this, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Concerns?
It's the public hearing.
Okay. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? And if not, be looking for a motion.
I'd make a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors with the condition that the easement be executed as presented.
You okay with that? We got a motion.
A second.
Can I get a second?
I got a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And if I may for comment, it may take, we'll be in touch, but it will go to the Board of Supervisors in the next few weeks. Likely the 10th because of the holiday, but we're gonna need for the Mylar to be delivered to the office as well from your surveyor.
From the surveyor and the attorney.
Yeah, they'll have to have a Mylar document
Yep.
that the chair has to sign and report that to the Board of Supervisors. So if we don't receive that, then it delays the approval process.
Okay, and on the clarification of the easement, can I have either Jay or the surveyor, Scott, ask you exactly what that,
Sure.
so that.
But he did say as presented in the
Right.
motion, so I think you could probably work off of this one,
Okay,
so.
very good. And so then I need to have I'm gonna write it down, but what was the
The Mylar?
Mylar?
Mylar.
I have to have
Yeah.
them get that ready.
Yeah, and I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, next item on the agenda is a public hearing, proposed JW Collins Homestead minor subdivision. Dan, you want to read that information into the record?
Yes. Okay, the Steffi and Harlan Francis Trust is filed for a one lot minor subdivision on the property identified as parcel number 894428100005. The subdivision is being completed to establish a lot for agricultural uses as it will be used to store grain, hay, and farm equipment. This minor subdivision proposal has been noticed in the Sioux City Journal's legal section on November 14th. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via November 8th letter about tonight's public hearing. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations have been notified and been requested to comment. The Woodbury County engineer found the proposal in compliance with Iowa code closure requirements and found that the lots have adequate access. The property is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District, and portions are located in the Zone A and Zone 0.2% floodplain. The city of Mobile had waived their extraterritorial review authority with approval of Resolution 2024-43 on November 20th. Based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinances, the proposal meets appropriate criteria for approval. Staff does recommend approval of this application, and the applicants are also present tonight.
Do we have anyone that wants to speak, have any additional information on this or? Okay, all right. Commissioners, do we have any questions, comments, concerns? No? If not, I move to close the public meeting.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, you're now close public meeting. Any other comments or questions? Inquiries? Okay. Gotta go fast here.
I'd make a motion to recommend approval of the final plat to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, you got it.
Folks have a select one line for us.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
And I'll be in touch with you as well.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. Rolling through these quickly.
Technically, this one's set up as a public hearing as well, so if I may, I
Yes,
can read that into the record.
absolutely.
Okay, this is a proposed zoning ordinance text amendment for preliminary discussions on the dimensional size for single-family dwellings, consideration of potential changes or amendments to section 4.11, single-family detached dwellings in the Woodbury County zoning ordinance. The purpose of the hearing is to collect information in a review of the dimension size of single-family dwellings, not limited to the regulations in section 4.11. Now on page, I believe it's 41 in the, let's see, it's, what page are we on in the packet?
71.
71,
Yep.
okay. So 71, the Board of Supervisors put the directive out for the zoning commission to review this respective policy back on their agenda meeting on November 5th, 2024. My understanding was, of course, the directive came from Supervisors Nelson and Bittinger. And I understand that they've had some input about concerns about the dimension size not being so flexible as far as the permitting of dwellings. And this kind of leads into the size of mobile homes, the size of tiny homes, and these are kind of issues that are much more intricate and I would say complicated than just simply adjusting the size. I know Supervisor Nelson kind of referenced the concept of having a minimum dimension like 23 square feet. That would be 23 by 23 would be our bare minimum. And if we multiply that and give a square footage, you could technically have something that has, let's say, a smaller dimension than the 23, but then a wider dimension. And so if you're arguing differences in square footage on sizes, the supervisors were very interested in what the whole rationale is behind having these minimum dimensions. And so this leads us into kind of a host of issues as far as what zoning regulations constitute. I understand in 2008, when this ordinance was put together, I've kind of consulted or talked with Tom a bit and Chris. They are zoning folks that have a vast experience as far as some historical nature of the county. So they're kind of my go-to folks when we need a history lesson. But I know when talking with Tom, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll let you kind of explain a bit. But I understand that the dimension size wasn't a huge discussion as far as the crafting of the 2008 ordinance. It wasn't like at the time where you had a lot of folks in the building focused in on the dimensions at that point in time, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's correct. I actually can't recall anybody
Hmm.
responding to that issue on the dimensions for dwelling size. So
Okay.
it was kind of put in there at that, and that's with no controversy, so.
Yeah, and what I want to kind of bring up to the commission is the dimensions. This leads us into the concept of the mobile home debate as far as the manufactured. And anytime you look at these policies, you got to be really careful with both state requirements and the federal requirements inside of the state code. local jurisdictions cannot have a different standard or, in a sense, discriminate towards manufactured or mobile homes in particular. But the local jurisdiction can have standards such as we have in place for inside of section 4.11. Our ordinance that was crafted in 2008 kind of kept that in mind as far as using the minimum dimension as a way to establish a consistent, fair standard that doesn't get involved in picking a scenario on how you allow one of those in a particular area or not. It sets a straight standard for the a blanket requirement of what constitutes a minimum size of a dwelling. And so that was very carefully put into place as a standard to have dimensions define what the expectations are for having a single family dwelling. So I'm not specifically talking about mobile homes or talking about manufactured homes, but I will say this: Woodbury County is not as sophisticated as the city of Sioux City or a community that has building codes. We do not have building codes, but we do have the expectation that you do have that continuous foundation perimeter that a structure is attached to. So you've probably seen the double wides, for example. If you have a double wide mobile home that or manufactured per se that meets those dimensional requirements, they would be allowed as far as being able to be affixed to the foundation and to meet those requirements where they become a permanent structure and not a vehicle as per a mobile home could be. And so this issue is far more intricate than just the dimension alone. The dimension is a tool as far as having a blanket standard. As far as mobile home districts, there's a difference between a mobile home being put on a lot. A farmer under the agricultural exemption for ag purposes can use the mobile homes, can have them put out there as long as they're compliant with the Iowa code in terms of the agricultural exemption requirements that they're being used for crop production support or cattle support, et cetera. But as far as the standardized zoning standards, the only other place they would likely fit is if they were to go into like a mobile home park under a classification that would go through the procedure. But we're not equipped for it based on the dimension for it to go on a lot, let's say a 16 by something, directly permitted on a lot without a farm scenario there. So I just want you to be aware initially, because we're at the beginning of this as far as researching it and understanding. And I was hoping that more of the public would be here, because I think that we all know one of the biggest standards on changing public policy or adjusting public policy is to have a large input from the public as far as is this being identified directly as a problem that needs adjusting or needs fixing. So we have to kind of keep that in consideration as well. But the regulations that are out there, I kind of put together, I've summarized a bit of this already, but got kind of just a little general slideshow I'll just put up on the screens in front of you, that housing regulations, basically some of the things I've described is if we're looking at the positives and negatives, let's just kind of separate out the idea of manufactured homes and mobile homes and just look generally at the dimension, because tiny homes are a conversation that have been out there and there's numerous opinions on that. Again, I would be really interested to know what our public feels about tiny homes. But the advantages of no minimum dimension is, of course, flexibility in design and affordability. It could possibly encourage future development. It could definitely be a reduction of regulation and maybe even efficient land use. Maybe not. All those things can definitely be debatable. That's why the public is essential. The disadvantages of a no minimum dimension is you can run into lack of uniformity in housing types. You can run into situations where there's debate on property values. We get that quite a bit from the public on how's this going to affect the value of my house. Somebody puts a different design of a house in a neighborhood that has, this amount of land value or that amount of land value, and you kind of get expectations a bit in a neighborhood. And to me, if you go down this road, then we got to start looking really carefully at our future subdivisions as far as looking at covenants and private agreements that go into place on those respective subdivisions, because those again are private relationships among the developer on what they expect for the lots. But without covenants, then it reverts back to what is allowed by the community inside of their zoning ordinances. So standard risk of standard housing and strain on infrastructure and services. So there can be lots of disadvantages as far as kind of letting anything go. Mobile homes, implications for mobile homes may be placed on lots without any restrictions on size. If those numbers are adjusted, because you've got to treat them exactly the same way as where you have any dwelling. It's dependent again on what we as a community come up as our local ordinances. And again, the other thing is, and there is an economic development aspect to this, and some folks argue in some of the literature that there's folks out there that would desire, we haven't heard it specific to our county, but in the country, there's places where folks desire for greater solutions to affordable housing in some way. But is this a path for it? Something to look at. So outright banning a mobile home is not feasible directly. There can be, of course, restrictions based upon, again, the size. The federal government through the Housing and Urban Development Code has very specific requirements for not discriminating at manufactured and mobile housing. Ordinances flat can't be discriminatory, and design standards, again, can be used. And so I think that that's part of the rationale on having a minimum dimension. It doesn't say it specifically in the ordinance. It's designed to not say it specifically, but that's kind of the scenario there that we are in as far as the consequences on whether you adjust these or not. And so that's really the background that I got on it. I was hoping we might have a few more folks here to discuss it, but the supervisors did ask for us to look at it. And I think probably we should maybe just kind of schedule some public hearings and see what the level of public demand is and definitely gauge that. But at the same time, I think it's important that we kind of associate ourselves with what the rules are as far as these. The opportunity, of course, is there for the farm community, but does this branch off into another discussion on if tiny homes are a possibility? But this could even branch out into other aspects of zoning districts as specific to the category of where you put something into. Because if you're going to talk about tiny homes or different scenarios there, I think it opens up a wider scope of a review than even what the supervisors had kind of pointed out there. So I think it's in the commission's hands as far as what you desire and what you want to come up with as far as what we can maybe pull out of the public or see what other communities have done. But ultimately, a review process is either telling the supervisors that we found something, maybe this might be something to look at, or you're comfortable with the current policy at hand. So a review means the sky is the limit, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So anybody have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions. I do have a comment, and this is historical, my historical stuff. Tom, you might not remember this, but I know that we had a lot of controversy with people talking about putting single wide trailers on property in their vicinity, and they were upset because it would affect their property values. I can think of one specifically that's not very far away from me, and the single wide trailer is still there.
Right, 'cause
The, I think that dates back to the red book where the single wides were allowed, because there was no dimensional standards. And there were, I mean, it was just accepted, so they were all grandfathered in. And back to what Dan said, you can't specifically target,
Mm-mm.
manufactured mobile home. The one thing that is there to try to improve that is by the axles have to be, I mean, it has to be completely disabled for road use and put on a foundation. But I think, like I said, the dimensional standards were put in there and that eliminated the ability of the single wides. And I don't know at the meetings where there was a lot of people wanting, I guess I should clarify, asking for the mobile home locations or
No.
being able to put them up.
No.
I don't remember anybody on that end of it.
I think as a whole, I think what we talked about, a lot of it is being able to protect property values of the people that were already there. And I think we were still seeing, well, maybe not in 2008, but a lot of maybe building or the possibility of development. And when you're thinking about like today's land prices, when you can buy a lot, if you're talking minimum of $40,000 for an acre, you know, I can't imagine someone wanting to put a tiny home on it or a mobile home on it, although maybe that's where they're making their financial adjustments, but not to mention, you know, out in the county, you're putting a septic in and you're putting a well in and
Yeah, I think, and actually that's a question I would have for Dan. Have you had any inquiries in the last 5 years for mobile home, trailer home location on lots or any discussion with any residents?
A couple, maybe once or twice, or maybe since I've been here, I probably heard a few times, a couple times where somebody asks about tiny homes. We get that inquiry once in a while. I'm not gonna say that it's over 5, so it's kind of general. As far as the mobile home, you hear about it once in a while. I can't say that I've never heard it, but it's not a frequent thing. The ones that do go out fall under the ag exempt when they have, where somebody's done it with a farm. So I think really where I've been engaged with somebody asking me that, oh, please, can I permit one or get one that was a non-farmer? I think maybe a couple times in maybe a 5 or 6 year period. So I don't think that we get a lot of demand as far as, oh, I want this. But at the same time, I think that one of the direction that came from the board, I think they were likely approached because of, you know, the dimensional size. You go in there and, you know, you sit there, and I think that's the perspective the supervisors looked at it. It's like, why is it 23? And I think, you know, on the surface, when we talk about it, why is it 23? You know, that 23 has a large story behind it, because of a lot of times ordinances have things that play off of each other. We have the restriction where you have one lot, you have one house. If you want an additional house, you have one of two options. You go split the property, you go through a subdivision, or you come to the commission and the Board of Adjustment and ask for a conditional use permit. So we have all these different levers of controls that make things happen, whether you're dealing with housing density. We have the AP and the AE. You allow 2 houses in the quarter section. So our ordinance has little sub-regulations that lead to the big picture, to what the community wanted back in in 2008. And I think even going through the recent comp plan that we went through, that wasn't a big theme that came out of the public, that we wanted vast changes to the housing. I thought we might see a little bit more on the tiny home thing, because you hear that once in a while. But at the same time, you got to really look at where we are as far as, rural Woodbury County, Northwest Iowa. There's a lot of demographics and socioeconomics and different scenarios there where the demands here might be different than they are in Polk County or, other areas of the state. So we always have to kind of keep that stuff in mind. As far as, a citizen-driven petition, I think that's what they teach us in school. Usually right away, that's the first thing you look at is the public policy circle, that the public will let you know when there's a problem.
Yeah.
And we've seen that on a host of issues as a whole. And so when we're going through that public process, maybe once in a while we'll get, inputs from citizens they bring it up, but has it risen up to, this level? I think that's all fair as far as the process, but at the same time, when the supervisors are looking at the number and we have the basic background on it, why is it 23? Why can't we be a little bit more creative out there? Because I think, you could be creative and build a really interesting home or a facility there, but there's more to it as far as the rationale behind that number. And that's where, of course, I've been trying to, of course, lucky to have these two as far as your background and being around the county. So I picked up a lot of insight just talking to you two from that perspective, but also looking into state code and seeing why you can't discriminate specific to those type of things. But I will say this, that if mobile homes were not sitting out there or manufactured homes and they were not part of the issue at all, it might be easier to pull that number back or adjust that. But there's just so many strings attached to it. So I would probably advise that we kind of keep this on the agenda and to see for a while
If
how
we
much
get
more,
any
how much,
Public interest.
how the public will see. Because we've seen how our community, when they do hear something, it does spread pretty quick as far as, opposing something or supporting something. So we'll just kind of keep that out in the
Sphere.
in the atmosphere. I'm trying to pull the right words. So that's really all I have at this point, but I'm definitely interested in, for further research. And if you want to have some further discussions with me about it as well throughout the month as well, please let me know.
My only comment would be, I agree. I don't see that there's an issue for us to, if you want to review it and host another public meeting or try to get public feedback, I'm fine with that. But if there is none, I don't think there's,
We need
my
to
own
continue
personal
to-
opinion, I don't think there's a need to spend any more time on the issue.
Hearing that, I think we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Okay. Would that be the nuclear one? Okay.
Find it. On page 81.
Okay. Again, this is just information. We want to, again, keep this nuclear issue out of Harvest. The debate as far as adding nuclear, I've been trying over the last several weeks since the supervisors assigned nuclear energy to us to kind of grasp generally what's in the literature as far as why people support nuclear and why people may not, as far as across the country. I think it's helpful to know what the people of Woodbury County feel about it, but we can definitely kind of go through the literature. And generally what some themes that I've seen out there, and I kind of got this little chart up in front of you that just kind of, I'm not going to go through and do the classic read the PowerPoint to the audience, but I will say that that there are reasons to support it as far as, an abundant level of energy supply that can be available, as far as having an economic benefit, impact. Having a solid energy source is very helpful to economic development when companies could possibly be looking at communities as a particular landing site for various operations. And we're in a world now where a lot more electricity is being used across the board. And so the country as a whole has to look at these energy options as something potentially for their community. We've had a lot of discussions about solar and wind and these others through the past years. And I know that the supervisors decided to put nuclear out there as, a potential option maybe to electrify the county and possibly have some economic development opportunities. There's lots of reasons folks might oppose nuclear. Obviously, the big events that once in a while you hear in the news, the Chernobyl years ago and the incidents in Japan. Some folks say that they're high cost. The radioactive materials could be of concern, and where they go, where they store it. So there's a lot of definitely legitimate concerns at times about this form of nuclear. When I'm talking about nuclear, I'm not just talking about the large ones, but they do have those smaller modular ones that are definitely being looked at across the board. Some folks really point to the fact that they're very low on the carbon emissions, which I touched on before. And so there's definitely a lot of material there. And again, I'm not going to read that totally off to you. And then getting involved in it. I think depending on how our community feels about it, I think it's pretty reasonable to add to the ordinance as far as a conditional use permit or a relationship that the county would have where we have a process where the public knows enough about the project to go through the zoning commission and the board of adjustment. We do that with the telecommunication towers. And the only reason I bring the telecommunication towers up is that might very well demonstrate the level of control that we have as far as the regulatory that comes from the federal. Much of that has those federal guidelines that they have to go through to even cite one of those respective projects. And so the question is, can the county put together a policy that shows that zoning is open to it, the county is open to it, but there is a permitting process where the public can come and understand what the whole thing is about as far as being able to engage the public, notify them through our traditional conditional use permit process. So again, there's going to be a lot of hopefully perspective on it as we move forward. We did attempt one of these public hearings a couple months ago, and we didn't have anybody show up to that. So I'm not going to try to assume anything, which is wrong, but so far it's not looking like the level to where we were with solar and wind. So I would probably suggest when we get into January to do the public hearings, and then we're clearly how to harvest at that point. So we kind of follow a protocol very similar to what we did with the solar stuff at the time. But I don't see this rising up to the level. I think that the literature says there's lots of, legitimate concerns about nuclear as far as safety protocols and everything. But at the same time, I think it kind of comes down to, do you say yes or no as far as it fitting inside of the zoning ordinance? It's in a way, it's like saying no to telecommunication towers, but in a sense, putting it in the ordinance kind of facilitates, or it shows an environment where Woodbury County could be considered maybe in the future as a site. And I want to be very clear, to my knowledge, there's no developers or anybody pressing the county that, hey, we want to put nuclear in tomorrow. This is just the supervisors putting it out there to say, hey, we've looked at all these other forms of energy. Let's consider nuclear. So that's really what it came about. So
Mhm.
that's all I have at this point.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. We're gonna go on to the next item on the agenda,
Okay.
our pipelines,
Okay.
page 95.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is a continuation. Last month or a couple months ago, we talked about this concept of what can the county do as far as these carbon pipelines. And I think we kind of established it pretty clearly at the time that we know we're very limited based on what the PHMSA requirements are at the federal level and what the state's requirements are with Iowa Code 479B. There is some regulations in 479B as far as whether you kind of decommission or you plug the pipes and you leave them or you remove them. So it's kind of in a sense, a private relationship among the company itself and the actual individual property owners that live beyond the corridor. And so after our meeting last month or a couple months ago when we were going through this, I had an individual point me to a letter, and you'll see it in your packet. And it's the page 109, and you probably saw that it's the same letter sent to different entities there. But this letter basically kind of is fascinating because it's a government agency there talking about the different responsibilities of the pipeline. And it's kind of fascinating, the rationale. And I will point out that this is a bureaucracy here. This is PHMSA, so it's a bureaucrat making a statement about what that relationship is. And kind of what I gleaned from the letter, kind of put together on page 121 there on what PHMSA's role is, what the state government's role is. And so kind of what the rationale on that letter is the letter does not explicitly address the decommissioning or the removal of pipelines. However, under federal pipeline safety laws, PHMSA's authority focuses on safety standards and does not cover the siting or decommissioning of pipelines, leaving these aspects to state and local governments. Local governments might possibly, and that's a key word, might possibly be able to implement decommissioning requirements through their land use and zoning powers, as long as these regulations do not conflict with federal pipeline standards. The question is this, we would need an attorney to look at this because of the fact that there's so many nuances and so many different opinions, including within the letter. And I think we've experienced that with the utilities board. We've experienced that with PHMSA all along. And the original request is that the supervisors put out is it's having us look at a policy of decommissioning. And where I think we need the attorney's help here is the fact of regulating where is our level of being able to sort of latch on and regulate onto that. I know we can take elements of Iowa code at times and create our local standards as long as it's not in conflict of some sort there. And so we're kind of in the same situation that we've been in before. Our county attorney's office, still, you probably heard in the media, it's still, they're getting better, but it's they're really busy in there and the staff shortages, and that's kind of spilled over to the departments in a big way. And we're hoping to get Joshua Widman back eventually, because Joshua was actually transferred over to criminal and he was always our go-to person. And so the supervisors put us in a position that if we see this as something that's feasible, going to outside counsel and seeing if we want to try to latch onto this. And this is sort of the first voyage in a sense on maybe a county looking at possibly doing this, but it does need attorney vetting. I think it's very clear. I've got some general ideas on it, but I haven't seen anything to this extent, because when I think of decommissioning, I usually think of you have an application, you have a process, you have them on the hook to be able to sign something as far as an agreement. So those are many of the questions that I have, and I know we've all been tasked to look at this, but I still think we're in a holding pattern as far as the county attorney's going to kind of give the thumbs up at some point on sending these issues over to outside counsel. So I'm kind of still in that pattern.
Okay.
So that's all I got, unless anybody have any questions?
Do the counties even have the ability to require a permit for a pipeline?
That has been one of the biggest questions as far as the proceedings the last several years. I will give you my opinion, but we know the companies may have a different opinion, and I'm not going to speak for them. My opinion is I open up the ordinance and I see a C in the column next to pipeline. And so I would say that something like that would need to go through the conditional use permit process. But then then there's the other arguments that we're experiencing with the eminent domain and the utilities board basically ruling that everything is now contingent on South Dakota. So now everybody's watching South Dakota. And I don't know enough to speak on it, but I think there's a lot of stuff going on up there in South Dakota as far as the company's interpretations on it. So we're still kind of where we were a couple years ago. You might remember, I think it was 22, we actually brought the ordinance before the zoning commission to look at actually regulating the whole pipeline issue. And it was put on hold because you had those other counties go ahead and pass them, and they've been challenged and they've been sued in court. And so those things are still underway. And I still think that that has to be looked at, because decommissioning is a part of those ordinances that are under litigation. So it's still part of the package. And so I think that's where we need the wise counsel of the attorney to tell us that, hey, it's not feasible at all, or yes, it is feasible. But I think at the local jurisdiction where we have language that has pre-existed pipelines and these activities since 2008, I would think that they would have to go through a conditional use permit, but they're going to hold a different view likely. And I don't want to say go ahead because I can't speak for them, but that's where we're at, is the challenge on what the utilities board took as that position on basically kicking it over to what South Dakota does. Now, if it doesn't pan out in South Dakota, I think it's done.
It's a moot
It's
point.
done. And so those are the things that we got to be careful with, because do we watch South Dakota and then not go spend the money? So we've got a lot to evaluate as far as how we proceed with this.
One thing, I guess, after you dropped the packet off, I did some digging, or tried to determine where the decommissioning would even come into play. Had a lot to do with at the time of abandonment. And that's about as clear as mud as far as what is abandoned. There's a lot of,
Definitions?
and they come from different sides, but when the pipeline's removed, a section of it's just eliminated. It's pretty clear they're never going to use that again, but they still argue that that's not a level of trigger to consider decommissioning because it's abandoned. So
Yeah. Exactly. And that 479B, I'm not gonna again read a PowerPoint out to you, but there is kind of a flip of a switch on abandonment, conditions of reversion, in that 479 B. So you get into what is abandonment mean, what is non-use? And so it kind of comes down on the landowner to, in a sense, have evidence that it's not being used in some sort to try to get that decommissioned or released or that relationship dissolved.
I'll bring up an example with the DOT station and Henning's property, where the pipeline's actually removed. That's still not the pipeline's position that that's a abandoned line at this time. That's
Even
just-
though it's not there.
It's
they're
not there.
Using it.
But that goes back to there's
Yeah.
opinions on both sides and I think,
Yep. A lot of our easements have been written pre-1970 too. I don't know how, that plays a role, but I've always found it fascinating with the power lines and talking with REC on, separate issues on how they're just basically blanket easements where they work under encroachment agreements and things like that. Easement is a very fascinating concept, just in general, so. But I'll keep looking into these things and see what we can do as far as progress, but I feel very much at the whim of the attorney's office at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Thank you very much.
comment I'd make on that too is, we don't need to probably spend money yet. If it comes down to the point where it's a moot point.
Yeah.
I don't think we should waste taxpayer money on something that might not even
Absolutely.
happen.
Agreed.
Great. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Move on. Number 6, public comment on matters not on the agenda. I see no public. I think we can go past that.
Yeah, nobody on the phone either.
Staff update, number 7.
I just want to make one point. On page 9 of your packet this time around, instead of asking for you to receive this, I just put it into the packet, but you received a communication from rural REC, which was pretty much similar to what Mid-American did with the grain bins. I just want to highlight for the record that you received that just when dealing with agricultural zoning and grain bins. So just want to have that on the record so that it's part of our proceedings.
Just to make a motion to receive.
It's actually, it's already in the packet, so.
Gotcha. Okay.
At this time, I don't have any major things other than what we had talked about on planning there. I will say, we, as you know, every year, I think almost every member now is cycled through the term where everybody has to submit an application for the zoning commission membership. And we've been soliciting applications for the open seat or the seat that Barb has right now. I don't know what Barb's intentions are, but the application deadline is closing pretty soon, December 2nd. We did get an applicant today. I understand the board office informed us that we got one that came in for the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment, Ashley Christensen announced she's not going to continue. So we've been soliciting applications for one on the Board of Adjustment and one on the commission. But we're hoping in the next few days that maybe get some more applicants because again, we haven't received anything for the commission yet, and we've received one for the Board of Adjustment. So hopefully the word continues to get out. We've put it in the papers a couple times, and it's been out on social media, and we're following the same protocols that we follow. And it's amazing because the last couple of years we've had people actually come to the Board of Supervisors and address the board and compete in a sense for the positions. And this time around, maybe things will change in a few days. So,
Time will tell.
sure.
Dan, can you reach out to those individuals that applied last? I think there was
There's a few we could,
2 for sure.
we could, and as far as we try to stay as
Neutral.
neutral
Yeah.
as possible. So that's been our practice, is to just get the word out and just hope.
Yes.
So,
Somebody sees it or somebody tells somebody else.
but we always encourage folks, please spread the word.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
At this time, I don't know yet if we'll have an item. No, we don't run into any like holiday conflicts, do we? If we have a meeting on
December?
December, it would be December 23rd if we had something. Would that affect any of your schedules?
I'll let you know on the 22nd.
I'll be on vacation,
Oh,
but I'll be here.
We'll probably likely, unless we get some major applications by the first of the month, which is a few days away. And right now we don't have anything that I anticipate, but, we gotta be prepared.
Gotta be prepared. Yep. Jump to,
When in doubt, always assume we're gonna have a meeting.
yes, yes, put it on the schedule, just in case.
Okay.
Okay? All right, thank you, Dan. How about number 8, commissioners? Comments or inquiries? Hearing none. How about an adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Chris, can I